Hello everybody, welcome to 2C TV, your global news channel. We come to you guys with some breaking news following President Trump's furious statement and announcement that two nuclear submarines have now been ordered to be deployed and repositioned towards Russia. This comes after the dramatic couple of days we've had with Russia's biggest alcoholic, Dmitry Medvedev, who has been poking the bear, and President Trump is taking the bait. It's all kicking off. We're going to give you guys the latest update. It's happening as we speak, and there's a lot of reaction also from the Russians. And at the same time, we do also have our live feed from the United Nations Security Council as they are preparing to get together now over the next few minutes to discuss the situation between Ukraine and Russia. We'll bring you guys the live feed shortly once we have a development at the UN. Before we start, just a big announcement on the 9th of August. As you guys know, in central London, we have our first ever international new media conference. We are bringing in new media outlets from around the world. Almost all tickets are now sold out. Unfortunately, the after party tickets and breakfast tickets are all sold out, but we do have a few late release tickets left for the actual conference. If you go on 2cevents.tv, you get all the information about this, and make sure to be there on the 9th of August. Now, first, the whole thing started because of Dmitry Medvedev, Russia's deputy chairman of a Security Council, who continues his drunk threats and drunk social media posts. One thing he said, for example, a couple of days ago was Trump's playing the ultimate game with Russia, 50 days or 10. He should remember two things. Russia isn't Israel or even Iran. Each new ultimatum is a threat and a step towards war, not between Russia and Ukraine, but with his own country. Don't go down the Sleepy Joe road. Now, obviously, President Trump didn't like this. Dmitry Medvedev has been continuing to also say a lot of other provocative things about the United States and President Trump. So over the last hour, President Trump made this announcement. Based on the highly provocative statements of the former president of Russia, Dmitry Medvedev, who is now the deputy chairman of the Security Council of the Russian Federation, I have ordered two nuclear submarines to be positioned in the appropriate regions, just in case these foolish and inflammatory statements are more than just that. Words are very important and can often lead to unintended consequences. I hope this will not be one of those instances. Thank you for your attention to this matter. I love when President Trump finishes the statements with thank you for your attention to this matter. So that started to happen. Following this, we have just received a reaction from the Kremlin and the Russia's state media as well. They are slightly concerned about this whole situation. They require answers. They demand answers from the Pentagon. So Russia now asked Pentagon to clarify the exact locations where the nuclear submarines have been deployed. Now, the Pentagon so far have not provided a clear answer. They have essentially said, we are not around, we are busy washing our hair. So that's the reaction from the Russians for now, and of course the Pentagon. The problem is, we know Medvedev says a lot of things. And a lot of things he says, sometimes he might be drunk, sometimes it could just be a tactic coordinated with Putin. President Trump is taking the bait. But President Trump also cannot really, he has to save face. But it doesn't really help the situation as we speak. Meanwhile, the Russians are still advancing in terms of their attacks on residential areas. They did confirm the latest attack on Kiev. A rocket engine has actually been found, a Russian rocket engine, where the Russians destroyed half a residential building. This was also confirmed by Moscow, killing 31 civilians. The explosion lifted the upper floors of the building, collapsed obviously the lower ones, and crushed people inside. Many were thrown from their apartments by the blasts. Survival chances were minimal. Let's go to the video. That's the rocket engine. Now, this was followed after, actually, what President Trump has been saying over the last couple of weeks, that we can't really negotiate with Putin, he doesn't want peace, and he continues to hit civilian areas and everything else. It seems like the Russian side are doubling down. They're basically saying we're going to hit civilian areas more. Let's quickly go...
We'll now begin its consideration of item 2 of the agenda.
Let's bring this down a bit. There we go. Okay, we can bring this down a bit. The UN Security Council. It's a little bit...
I now give the floor to Mr. Miroslav Jencha.
What on earth is going on?
I now give the floor to Mr. Jencha.
Okay, they're a little bit behind. So, okay, we'll fix that in a second. We'll go back to the UN Security Council to find out what on earth is going on with those guys. But yes, the Russian side continue to double down in terms of their attacks on civilians in the capital, in Kiev. Next video we have is the Ukrainian rescue workers moving the bodies of a young Ukrainian mother and 2 daughters who were killed in the Russian airstrikes on Kiev. 31 of the civilians were killed. This is one of the deadliest attacks on the capital since the war started. We're getting more updates from the UN, don't worry. Now, speaking of nuclear submarines, there has been a development since the earthquake in Russia a couple of days ago. In case you haven't heard, a Russian nuclear submarine that was based in Kamchatka has been damaged by the earthquake and the tsunami that followed it. Satellite images show the deformation of one of them at this base, as a part of the structure has been bent and probably broken away, obviously, from the main hull. At the time of the incident, there were no submarines over there. The experts believe that the damage is not really a serious military significance or any sort of threat when it comes to nuclear itself. This base is a key facility for Russia's Pacific Fleet, and it is a home to their modern nuclear submarines that they have had over the last couple of decades, as well as obviously the older Delta-class submarines from the days of the Cold War. So one of them has been damaged, but not in a serious way. So nothing has exploded, which is good. Meanwhile, Putin himself has been meeting up with his best friend, Lukashenko, and it's been a fascinating few hours, by the way. Lukashenko, who is at this point Putin's lapdog, said this about Trump and the West in general. There are a couple of things that Lukashenko said. It's very important to see this, especially the second thing I'm going to show you, because he was saying that the Ukrainians should beg Russia, otherwise Russia would seize the whole of the country. And then Putin was like, no, we're not seizing, we're returning it to Russia because Ukraine doesn't exist. Let's go to the first thing, Lukashenko talking about the West and Trump.
Поэтому я вот публично говорил заявление и нашего общего друга, за которого мы так переживали, Дональда Трампа. Я помню наши переживания, чтобы он победил и так далее. Там 50, 60, 10 дней. Это тоже так политика не делается. Если он мира хочет, он должен подключаться аккуратно, основательно. Это военное столкновение. И указать там не получится, тем более ядерной державе. Слушайте,
Russia does the exact same thing to the nuclear power that is America. Just pot kettle. Oh dear.
Им открыто это сказал.
Lukashenko, seriously, can't take it seriously.
Вы говорю президенту, скажите, что надо аккуратно это все делать. И можно договориться. Все время опять воздушное перемирие. Я говорю, да Россия в этом заинтересована, и президент Путин. Но вы же этого не хотите. Скажите Зеленскому, пускай на это идет, чтобы не было вот этих летающих аппаратов и на голову людям не падали.
poor Lukashenko. His information is not up to date. That the position from the Ukrainians on Zelenskyy has changed. Zelenskyy has been forced to change his position. Also, Lukashenko sitting next to Putin, he does make Putin look more sensible. Just by default anyway. This is the bit where he did mention that the Ukrainians should beg Russia and basically ask for peace. Otherwise, Russia would... He's speaking on behalf of Russia. Putin is sitting right next to him, although he agrees with him. But they did say Russia will seize Ukraine, and Putin was like, no, Ukraine is ours. We're not seizing it, we are returning it to Russia.
Украина сегодня бегом должна просить его: Владимир Владимирович, давайте сядем за стол переговоров, давайте договоримся. В противном случае, через несколько, там, месяц, полтора, два, не знаю, там вообще даже оборонительных сооружений не останется. Россияне все это потихонечку отгрызут, захватят и пойдут дальше, отвоюют.
Вернут.
They're insane. Absolutely insane. Okay. They think that's what's going to... I mean, obviously they know that's not going to happen. And just like how Putin, Trump, Europe, everybody knows that the US is not going to nuke Russia. And the final outcome is going to be the same anyway. There will be a deal. It's just about the technicalities of what part of territory. And in terms of the relationship between Ukraine and NATO, what sort of relationship? Obviously, the Europeans are pushing for NATO membership. President Trump is saying, okay, we could do it differently. The overall outcome is going to be the same. Russia is not going to be able to take over the whole of Ukraine, and President Trump is not going to nuke Russia. It's just complete insanity. But obviously, this is the game of chicken that everybody is playing at this point. And meanwhile, the Europeans continue to basically provoke even more, stir the pot. Speaking of NATO, Russia did confirm, by the way, that they've done another whoopsie, accidentally hitting another NATO territory. So this is the Russian suicide drone that accidentally struck the Lithuanian territory earlier. The drone was actually filmed entering Ukraine, the Ukrainian airspace, and a few days ago, but has now been found in Lithuania, which, by the way, is a NATO member. Now, this isn't really chaotic. If this were happening, and things like this happened about 2 years ago, 2-3 years ago, beginning of the conflict, right? Every time something like this happened, there were people saying, oh, this is it, World War III, NATO has been hit. Ah. No, calm down. It's been happening regularly, partly because Russians can't aim, partly because also there's been other versions of this where some of the Ukrainian missiles hit the other way or misfired, let's just say. It's been a chaotic conflict overall, and nobody's achieving anything. That's basically apart from those who are profiting from it, apart from that overall. President Trump also did hit back earlier, saying, I have just been informed that almost 20,000 Russian soldiers died this month in this ridiculous war with Ukraine. Russia has lost 112,500 soldiers since the beginning of the year. That is a lot of unnecessary death. Ukraine, however, has also suffered greatly. They have lost approximately 8,000 soldiers since the 1st of January 2025, and that number does not include their missing. Ukraine has also lost civilians, but in smaller numbers, as Russian rockets crash into Kiev and other Ukrainian locales. This is a war that should have never happened. This is Biden's war, not Trump's. I'm just here to see if I can stop it. Following that, he made the announcement that he's deployed to reposition 2 nuclear submarines in the region. Zelenskyy have also responded about the whole of these negotiations. Everything has been going on. I'm also going to keep an eye on, by the way, on the UN Security Council. We're going to go back to them, see what on earth is happening over there. Zelenskyy said, we see and support President Trump's efforts to end Russia's war, to stop the killing and to achieve a dignified and lasting peace. We are grateful to everyone around the world who supports peace efforts and help us protect lives. We have heard the statements coming out of Russia if these are signals of a genuine willingness to end the war with dignity and establish a truly lasting peace, and not merely an attempt to buy more time for war or delay sanctions, then Ukraine once again reaffirms its readiness to meet at the level of leaders at any time. We understand who makes the decisions in Russia and who must end this war, which is Putin. The whole world understands this too. Ukraine calls for moving beyond the exchange of statements and technical level meetings to talks between leaders. The United States has proposed this. Ukraine has supported it. What is needed is Russia's readiness, which, by the way, it took Zelenskyy months to get to this point. But he's reached this point eventually because Trump forced him. Now Putin is not playing. So you see how pointless the whole thing is becoming. Anyway, while that is happening, let me just double check the situation with the UN
resolutions in full respect of
so this is the meeting that they are having about
and
Russia and
territorial
Ukraine.
integrity of
I'll get some reaction
Ukraine
from you guys in a second.
within its internationally recognized borders. Diplomacy, not fighting, needs to escalate in the coming days and weeks. Diplomacy that leads to real, tangible, verifiable, and lasting results that would be felt by the long-suffering people on the ground. The United Nations remains ready to support all meaningful efforts to this end. I thank you.
Let's go back to the actual room.
I thank Mr. Yencha for the briefing that he's provided. I will now give the floor to those council members who wish to make statements.
I love it when they do
now give the
translation. We
floor
can't even hear the guy. We just hear the English version.
Denmark.
Yes, Mr. President, and let me once again congratulate you and personally and Panama on assuming the presidency for the month of August. You can count on Denmark's full support. I wish to start by thanking Assistant Secretary General Yencha for his briefing, and I also welcome the participation in this meeting of Ukraine,
They love to talk, don't they? They just love
Lithuania, and the
meetings after
European
meetings.
Mr. President,
Ukraine.
some may question why this council is meeting to address the situation in Ukraine today,
I'm
once
asking
again, just over 24 hours since we last convened on this issue. The sad truth is that just hours before we sat here yesterday, reiterating our support for Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity, Russia was busy attacking Ukraine in one of the most vicious and violent attacks so far in this long, tragic war.
Yeah, they keep
Ukraine's
doing it, and
capital,
you keep having a
Kiev,
meeting.
was particularly targeted. Destructions were massive, with more than 30 civilians killed and 159 wounded, many of them children, as we just heard from ASG Gensha. Even though these harrowing attacks have sadly become, we must do all we can to break this cycle. We cannot become numb to these images,
Did someone say
to
Russia
the
is
suffering
winning?
they convey.
In the
Nor
live
can
chat,
we
Tim
allow
says
Russia's
Russia is
behavior
winning. Why would this?
to be condoned.
How are they winning?
So, following the latest
been
massive
years.
attacks on Kiev and other regions,
It was supposed to take
Ukraine
3 weeks, that
rightly
war.
asked the Security Council to convene an emergency meeting. Denmark, together with France, Greece, Slovenia, and the United Kingdom, supported this call. We did so because we believe that as the primary body for maintenance of international peace and security, it is our collective responsibility to respond. Mr. President, as we've heard, in just one night, Russia launched over 300 drones and missiles at Ukrainian
She's
cities,
on her phone.
with devastating impact on civilians and
She's not
civilian
even listening.
infrastructure. We cannot accept this. No country who signed the UN
dear.
Charter should accept this. We recall that civilians and civilian objects are protected under international humanitarian law and must not be targeted. Denmark strongly condemns these attacks. It is clear
Obviously.
that the string of attacks is
Repeating the same thing
escalating in
every day.
intensity, and that Russia relentlessly continues its illegal invasion. These are not the actions of a country interested in peace. Mr. President, we strongly call on Russia to agree on an immediate and unconditional ceasefire without any delay, a ceasefire that Ukraine has long been ready to agree to. Denmark reiterates our call for a comprehensive,
long-term
just,
solution as
and
well,
lasting
not
peace
just a
in Ukraine,
ceasefire.
in line with the purposes and principles of the UN Charter. We support all efforts aimed at achieving this
Someone
goal,
says she's on TikTok.
including initiatives led by the United States. We urge Russia to engage in the peace talks constructively and in good faith. The Ukrainian people have endured too much for too long. Peace is long overdue, and we truly believe it is within
Wonder
reach
what the US would
if
say.
Russia finally realizes that its illegal war of aggression needs to end. Until then, Denmark will continue our unwavering support for Ukraine in its legitimate self-defense. I thank you.
Okay, let's see who's next.
Agradezco.
Obviously,
I
Panama's
thank the
chairing this.
representative of
Obviously.
Denmark for the statement.
All right, depending on who's next.
I now give the floor to the representative of France.
Should we listen to France? Let me
Thank
know in the
you,
live
Mr.
chat.
President.
What is the consensus?
And
Say
please
yes
receive
or
my
no.
best
Do we
wishes
listen to
for
France?
your
Yes or
presidency
no?
of the Council this
I'll
month
wait
of
for the
August.
consensus in the live chat. Then I'll get some reaction
I
from
too
you guys
would
if you
like
say no.
to
I'll
present
wait
my
30
congratulations
seconds.
to the
Go.
permanent representative of Pakistan for his effective presidency and that of his mission throughout the month of July. I'd like to thank the Assistant Secretary General for Political and Peacebuilding Affairs, Mr. Yencha, for his briefing. The weight of every word of it was fully understood. I'd like to also welcome our colleagues from Ukraine, Lithuania, Poland, and the European Union. Mr. President, once again, we're meeting
say
to
no.
discuss Ukraine.
Okay.
Why? Because the situation is intolerable there in Ukraine.
Okay, we got the consensus. It's no. I love how some people would get offended. Say, but we want to hear from these representatives. No, you don't want to hear from these representatives. These guys have been having these meetings about 50 times a day since 2022, 2023. It's the same thing over and over again. I'm just waiting to see if there's a proper big reaction from the US on this, and also see what the Russian minions are saying. Then we'll get back to it anyway. But it's not that important what the European leaders are saying at this point. We got a first reaction saying, watching with my mate Alex right now. So you can shout out, please. Shout out. Okay. Yeah, I mean, the consensus was no. I did give a chance to Denmark, at least, because I do like Denmark, but not necessarily the UN representatives, by the way. But we'll get back to the UN in a second. We've got Deb saying, this reminds me of two men chesting each other to see who backs down first. Yeah. There's another super chat here. Nina says, all talk, no action. Went through one ear, out the other. Yes, I agree. And then this is why I think I should make you guys suffer even more. Do you know why? Because it's kind of fun. So I'm gonna go back to the UN Security Council.
Territory is pursuing
see what the
an
France- what the
outdated
French
form
are
of
saying.
imperialism, seeking to disguise this by claiming to fight neo-Nazism or to act preemptively against alleged NATO aggression is both a lie and an instrumentalization of the Security Council. Russia can every day choose to halt its aggression without compromising its own security, far to the contrary. Mr. President, as the people of Kiev observe a day of mourning this Friday, Russia is stubbornly choosing to ignore calls for peace and to reject the ceasefire that Ukraine accepted 5 months ago and that the entire international community is demanding. Russia is continuing with its delaying tactics. Let's, for instance, take the Istanbul
What's this?
meetings where Ukraine was prepared to attend at
I look
summit
beautiful.
level to discuss a ceasefire and a path to peace. Russia downgraded these to expert level discussions and reiterated demands tantamount to the mutilation and the
Don't worry, I'll get back to
subjugation
the live
of
chat in a
Ukraine.
second.
In truth, Russia seeks nothing less than Ukraine's outright capitulation. Through its Kremlin spokesperson, it bluntly states that it cannot at this stage achieve its objectives through diplomacy and it must therefore continue its so-called special military operation, a euphemism for invasion and attempted annexation. Until when? Mr. President, the Council can no longer merely observe that the aggressor refuses to bring an end to its aggression. Above all, when this aggressor in the Charter has a special responsibility, that is to permanently protect states from aggression and to permanently protect international peace and security. The Council must compel the aggressor to comply with this by demanding a full, immediate and unconditional ceasefire. That's our role and our duty. The Charter entrusts this to us and the world expects us to fulfill it. Thank you very much.
That's the end of France. The fascinating thing about the United Nations, the idiots, is they do, firstly, they repeat the same thing. But they also, for example, tell Russia, well, Russia should know war is bad. Like, I don't think Putin cares at this point. It's not like Putin's going to be like, well, I was kind of on the fence, but the UN, people at the UN said war is bad. I've changed my mind now. I'm going to surrender. That's not how it works with him. And on the one hand, if you send Macron and Starmer and Mark Carney, all three of them, wet lettuces, like they look like vanilla. They're not even alpha. They stand next to each other saying, we are ready to attack Russia, right? That's not going to work because nobody actually respects you to do that. Then you get all these diplomats. Oh my God, these diplomats who come from their long drunk lunches with caviar and champagne, sit there for the next few hours ranting nonsense. And they say we should also do diplomacy. We should tell Putin, please be nice. Like, neither of those solutions work because you're all idiots. The European leaders leading this whole movement, they have not achieved anything. And Russia has obviously also failed massively because their war was supposed to last about 3 weeks. Still going. And but the whole thing has been completely pointless apart from, as I said, those who have been profiting from this in general. We have someone who doesn't like the Jews. You ready? You ready for this? In the middle of... I love how we talk about like any issue, the anti-Jews come out in the live chat. Thomas says, Russia kills 20 civilians. Israel kills 20,000 children. You are a joke. I love how this Thomas person has access to the accurate data coming from Gaza. Yeah, 20,000 children. First things first, you can't just make up numbers. Secondly, absolutely, more civilians have died in Gaza overall compared to Ukraine, mostly because Ukraine and Russia, both of them as countries, when each side will attack, if they're under attack by anybody, they will try to protect their civilians. They have shelters, they have bunkers for civilians, and they tell the civilians to leave the areas. What do you think Hamas do? They literally grab the civilians, use them as a human shield. They don't even let them leave, and a lot of them will just voluntarily stay anyway. Oh dear. You're anti-Muslim, Muslim S pro Gunster. I know what he's trying to say. I love. He's scared he can't say genocide. It's like if he says the word genocide, he's gonna get banned. I'm saying it. See, I'm still going. Idiot Gunster. Right. Mike says, of course, it's all Israel's fault. Yeah, basically. Putin has gone mad because of Israel. It's always the Jews' fault. Who's talking now? Greece is speaking right now. God. I'll go to the UN Security Council in a sec. Don't worry. Kevin says that the best thing President Trump can do to stop the Russian advance in Ukraine is to convince India to switch from Russian oil and weapons to American oil and weapons. India is threatened by its Russian ally China and Pakistan. There's a lot of theories about India and India's presence in BRICS. The biggest theories by the so-called experts is that India has been positioned in BRICS as one of the major members of BRICS on purpose, because all the other members of BRICS are essentially anti-West. China, Russia, and all the others. India is in BRICS. Why? It's been positioned that, usually obviously being tactful, for the interest of India, because it's in the interest of India to be close to the West, but also be present in the region because China's next door, being a rival. So it's best to be in the tent. Which means you can't really do that, because if India proactively makes a move against Russia, the whole of the BRICS will make a move against India. It's a lose-lose right now. So you kind of need India to stay in BRICS and to keep them close. But although President Trump also threatened India, saying, well, don't go against the dollar just because you're part of BRICS. Anybody who goes against the dollar in favor of BRICS, we will put sanctions on you. Blood says Yeshua is the Messiah. And Joanne says, thank you for the real news. Speaking of real news, Slovenia is talking. Who wants to hear from Slovenia? Let's quickly go to that. Let's see what these guys are saying in the middle of all this.
The aggression continues for the 4th year. Reasons for invasion keep changing and are ranging from situation of Russian minority, Ukrainian NATO aspirations, unspecified security concerns, to supposedly nationalistic orientation of government and people. As per UN Charter, none of these reasons can be a justification for aggression. The conflict is rapidly deteriorating. With each passing meeting, we speak of a new negative record. Deadliest night, deadliest year, largest number of missiles and drones launched in a single day. These are facts, and it is good to keep reminding ourselves of them, as with months and years, fatigue settles in and pictures become blurry. Second, the Council is often paralyzed to take meaningful action. However, civilians in armed conflicts continue to turn their eyes and hopes and expectations to the Council when horrible things are happening to them. This applies to Ukrainians, to Gazans, to Sudanese, to Haitians, or civilians suffering in any other conflict area. For Ukrainians, when a tragedy like the one 2 nights ago happens, the least they expect is for the Council to discuss, hopefully condemn, and ultimately to protect them.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, the only issue I have again with these diplomats, I'm not going to go back to the UN Security Council anymore because I'm actually surprised and impressed how over the years, especially when it comes to like one specific issue, like Ukraine, Russia, and the same applies to other issues, when it goes for years, every day, for years, it's quite impressive. They don't run out of things to say. They talk more than do anything else in their lives. It's absolutely fascinating that they can still say things. You've already said all this. But they have to be seen to be doing something. And by doing something is basically having a meeting to organize another meeting. It's completely great. This is why the whole world is falling apart, because these idiots are just talking. Anyway, what's happening? John says, you have the best news channel ever. Thank you. I agree. We have another super chat. India and Russia are BFF. It's again the primary strategy from Modi, and I still agree with him, is to make sure that China is in check. If that means that India should still be close in BRICS to Russia and others, they will have to do it. It's in the interest of not just the Indian economy, but also geopolitically. It just becomes slightly difficult at times because they have to also keep the West close. So. Templar says, the members of TCTV, by the way, make sure if you want to get access to our exclusive private chat forum and also all the other documentaries and everything else that we have, download the 2CTV app, the home of geopolitical news, from your app stores today. You get access to all the podcasts, original series, documentaries, chat forum, and also the news posts. Obviously, we do the breaking news live streams on YouTube, but if you want to get more out of the channel, the actual channel is on the app and the website, 2c.tv, which is down here. That's where you can actually get access to everything throughout the day. All right. All the UN is good for is sitting around, talking and wagging their finger at everyone with no action and no outcome. They had their place, but are now completely pointless, a waste of money. And if you listen to them too long, you get dizzy. That is a perfect summary of what the United Nations is about these days. But the problem is, because they just sit there and talk, the problem with just sitting and talking is that eventually humans would say nonsense, and eventually it would expose your own hypocrisy and double standards, which means they sit there, for example, they say, okay, so we have to care about humanitarian issues. Then they're like, okay, well, we don't have time to call out all conflicts. Let's be selective. And this is where their bias comes out. So they spend more time talking about Gaza and the IDF fighting terrorists than, for example, what's going on in Sudan or Yemen or anywhere else in Congo or Nigeria. It is interesting. They don't care about what's going on happening to the Iranian people in Iran by the Islamic occupation. They don't care. It's all selective. Anyway, Dasman says that at least our toilets will be safe in his bunker. Apparently, he's still very much high on opium. He doesn't do much these days. He just sleeps and takes drugs because he's not well. Poor Khamenei. It says, no Jews, no news. Yep. Graham says, was the French guy trans? He had a female voice. It's the translator. Guys, UN has been trolled. The UN translator has been trolled by the live chat. Love it. Super chat, have you talked to Tommy since the incident? I have actually messaged him, but I haven't actually been able to have a proper conversation. We've kind of texted, but I haven't actually had a phone call yet. I'll find out soon about how he's doing and everything else. Gemma says, absolutely love your reporting. Thank you so much. Well, there's a very long... What is going on? What? Okay. This is the problem when I have to do everything on my own. Literally, multitasking. I am not good at multitasking. But that's what I'm actually impressed with myself when I manage to do these breaking news live streams on my own when I don't have the team to support me. John Walker says the Russian people must get rid of Putin before they're all killed. It's tricky because when you have a huge chunk of the country still backing the leader, for various reasons, by the way, it becomes hard. So, for example, you can say that certain places, bad leaders are bad leaders because the people don't want them. And some places you could say, well, bad leaders for the people of the country are not bad leaders. I'm not saying necessarily Putin is loved by all the Russians. That's not the case. We do know a huge chunk of Russians also don't like Putin, but they can't say much. But the big chunk of Russia still like Putin. You know, they're like, it's fine. Because the narrative from the Kremlin works. Even now. Although there's been some skepticism over the last year or so. But actually, it's still there. It's very different to, for example, Iran, where it's an occupation. People can't speak out. It's different to North Korea, where people partly have been forced, literally gone to their heads, you like Kim, you like the Kim family. The other half have been brainwashed because those in North Korea, just like those in China during Chairman Mao's dictatorship, they culturally, a lot of those people in the Far East, they are collectivists, which means over time you can't brainwash them. Over time, you can not necessarily, doesn't mean every single person in China is a communist, but overall, collectivism works. If you sell collectivism, like in Russia, like in China, and collectivism has different forms, obviously. It doesn't always have to be dictatorship, but collectivism where people will actually not prioritize their own life and their own family, then they would do it for the greater good. Whether it's for the leader or the ideology or the flag, same thing, it's collectivism. They have been successful in doing that. There's someone who keeps spamming the live chat. Okay, so you know what? I have warned people not to spam. We believe in free speech. You can say whatever you want. Even if you want to criticize my face, I will cry, but it's fine. But we ban people who copy and paste. And you know who you are. I'm not even going to show you a comment on the screen. I'm just going to ban you because it's boring. Spamming is boring. Copy and pasting is boring. Anyway. What is this? Moved the UN headquarters to Haiti. Those folks can use the work and the money. Imagine. Actually, if you were to use to move the United Nations to a country or a place that is not New York, for example, with a very different lifestyle, I don't think many of these diplomats would want that job anymore. Trust me. I don't know. Even if you send them... send the UN headquarters to Pakistan. Great idea, right? Let's see how many of these champagne socialist diplomats would like to be diplomats at the UN. That's the only way you could get rid of the United Nations. Anyway, I believe the Russians are speaking. Ah, there we go. Let's see what the Russians are saying.
essentially voiced her version of what happened, as predictable as it was. Does the Council accept such an inept waste of its time and resources on other issues on its agenda? Imagine that we had had a situation on the country situation and then decided that we had forgotten to discuss one aspect and then reconvened on the next day to discuss that. We think that such an approach of the Western sponsors of the Kiev regime is irresponsible, unacceptable, and seriously undermining the credibility of the Council and its ability to tackle with indeed urgent crises. And they have the temerity of accusing my country of wasting the working time of Security Council members. Furthermore, when they condone the attempts of the Kiev regime to separate the discussions of the Ukrainian crisis into right discussions and wrong discussions, the Western delegations do show the very same wish to undermine the efforts for peace in Ukraine, which we describe in our statements, including my statements yesterday.
He's just ranting.
Mr. President, if we go back to the formal reason for the convening of the meeting today, well, in the early hours of the 31st of July, the armed forces of Russia, pursuing the goal of demilitarizing Ukraine, did indeed deliver a group strike using a long-range, high-precision weapons and UAVs on military-industrial facilities of Ukraine.
Civilian!
Including a military airfield, ammunition depots, stocks of missiles, and UAV components.
Oh my God.
All of the intended military targets were hit. And let me underscore once again, we're talking about objects which are related to the Ukraine military potential. And this was confirmed by the videos by Ukrainian users in social networks, which show very clearly the secondary explosion of ammunitions at the objects we hit, some of which were deployed in civilian sector in violation of the IHL. On the other hand, our armed forces, as was the case before, were acting in strict compliance with international humanitarian law
that's just a
and
lie.
were not targeting civilian objects.
Oh my God.
When it comes to striking the residential building in Kiev and the deaths of civilians, well, the military experts who analyzed the videos which exist concurred on the only reason for the tragedy, as was the case previously as well. The reason is the criminal deployment of the Ukrainian air defense in dense urban areas and the unskilled way of guiding them.
Okay.
During this special military operation, we have received numerous confirmation of the fact that Ukrainian air defense missiles are the main danger for the civilians of this country, and the Ukrainians know that very much, and they openly comment on this. If the armed forces of Ukraine did comply with the IHL, then we would have been able to avoid such tragedies. And the civilian population of Ukraine is not suffering from direct Russian strikes. But the
gaslighting the
expired
world.
princeling in Kiev is not interested in easing the plight and suffering of his civilians, but rather in presenting such situations provoked by him into present them as intentional Russian strikes. His only goal here is to save his own hide and convince his sponsors to continue financial and military support to his agonizing dictatorial and corrupt regime. The abuse of the Security Council meetings so as to shift the responsibility for the death of his own citizens is a favorite trick of Ukrainian state propaganda. It is not a coincidence, and many have noted that the most high-impact tragedies miraculously coincide with the eve or the time of the visit of the Kiev clique abroad, when he needs to get the pity from yet another country or cage another tranche of military or financial assistance. What's left outside here is the fact that the Ukrainians themselves launch several hundreds of UAVs against our country daily, intentionally trying to strike civilian objects in their futile attempts to sow panic and undermine the stability of my country. Last week alone, as a result of that, 155 civilians were injured, two-thirds of them because of drone strikes. The highest number of victims were in Belgorod, Kherson, Zaporozhye Oblast, and the Krasnodar region. The Ukrainians are deliberately
Still
targeting
going.
the places where civilians are congregate, residential buildings, public transport, and emergency services. For example, as a result of a UAV strike against an ambulance in the Pologo region in Zaporozhye Oblast, the driver of the ambulance died, and the paramedic and the nurse
If it
there were
doesn't stop, I'm
injured.
going to end it.
In Golopristan district of Kherson Oblast, 3 civilians died and 5 were injured because of a drone attack on a civilian bus. All of these facts are carefully ignored by Kiev and his backers, as we have been able to see very well today. And what is being done by secretariat staff from relevant agencies is also disingenuous, because they pretend they
Get
don't
on with
know
it.
nothing about this, or they say that it's impossible to verify the information about Ukrainian crimes. All of this is obviously a strike undermining credibility of the UN. Mr. President, in conclusion, let me underscore
thank God,
once
it's finishing.
again that we are not against discussing
right.
the Ukrainian crisis in the Council. We're against making the tragedy of the Ukrainians who became hostages of the Zelenskyy regime and his maniacal will to sacrifice them on the altar of geopolitical interests, that it be exploited in the Council for political reasons. It's disrespectful and indifferent to the suffering of thousands of people who are dying and suffering in other areas of the world. And Western members of Security Council are in no hurry to ask for meetings on that. I'd like to believe that reasonable Security Council and international community members with good sense will support us in this.
Yeah, thank God. I swear. All right. Do you see the problem I have with these stupid UN diplomats? Oh my God. Every single one of them keep ranting and ranting. Oh, I did love the gaslighting. Nothing has happened. We didn't do anything wrong. You need to check with the Russian state media and Kremlin, because you're sending out mixed signals and mixed messaging. One side would say, yes, we did actually hit civilians. The other ones are like, we did it because they were using civilians as a human shield. You're just repeating the IDF's line in Gaza. You can't say it. We can't just repeat. Iran did the same thing when they hit Tel Aviv. They're like, oh, there was this tiny apartment block. We had to hit it because there were 500 tanks inside the building. Where are you going to put the tanks? You can't just randomly say things. But the thing is, when these diplomats speak, because they're all very calm and clear, they rant, but they're very calm. But like people say, well, they must be telling the truth. These are United Nations diplomats, United Nations representatives. I'm sure. And then on the other hand, the Russian Federation aside, you saw the other idiots. The European globalist side. Oh my God. I'm getting sick and tired of all of these people. Both the Russian side and the European side, they're all completely insane now. Nobody knows exactly how to play the other one. The Russians know how to, for example, deal with your generic, polished career politicians like Emmanuel Macron, Mark Carney, and these guys. They know how to deal with them in a more reactionary way. If Macron says something, Russians know, Putin knows, okay, if he does this, I'm going to do this. If he does that, I'm going to do that. That's why they don't like to deal with someone like Trump, because Trump is unpredictable. Having said that, the European side still don't actually understand the Russian mentality. They still don't understand Putin's mentality. They are dealing with Russia as the threat from the European perspective, just like a standard enemy. We have to threaten them, and we have to then send diplomatic statements and then wish for the best. That's not how it works. Everybody is wasting everybody's time at this point. It's been years. Anyway. They're all idiots. Let me just go back quickly to the live chats before I lose my mind. There's a stupid chat. What's this? There's a super sticker. Thank you for this. Someone says moron. You mean not Macron? His name is moron. Yeah, and what's this? The F sounds like a woman. You're one of them. One of them. It's a translator, for the love of God. Anyway, there is some reaction from the members of 2CTV Plus as well. What do we have? I missed a couple. The UN stands for useless nonsense, or useless nutters, as I call them. And TechLord says Russia have many operations going on in the UK to destabilize the UK illegal immigrants via manage Albanian mob as well. There was also been a lot of illegal immigration, as we want to call it, crises and operations in Poland. The Polish border have had a lot of problems because of the same thing. But we can't really overall say, obviously, the Russian side will have their infiltrators in the UK. MI6 will have their infiltrators in Russia. That's just, oh my God, Pakistan is speaking. Don't worry, I'm not gonna torture you by showing you what Pakistan is saying right now live at the United Nations. I'm not that crazy. I'm not that cruel. So look at that moustache. Solid. Anyway, let's move away from Super Mario. And thank you again, ladies and gentlemen. Don't forget to download the 2C TV app, the home of geopolitical news, from your app stores today. And obviously join 2C TV Plus as a member by going directly on 2c.tv. You will get 1 month free if you join as an annual subscriber. And as I said, we do have a few tickets left, late release tickets for the new media conference on the 9th of August in central London. Go on 2C events.tv to get all the information. We have the New Culture Forum coming, we have Darren Grimes coming, we have Andre Walker joining us, we have, where is everything else? There we go. We have Stefan Thompson from Visegrad 24 from Poland coming, Carl Benjamin of Lotus Eaters, Emily Schrader from Israel, we have Dan Wootton from England or Englandstan, and Andy No from the Post Millennial, and Rebecca. Actually, but we actually have more surprise guests as well. I'm just going to show you some of them. I'm not going to show you all of them because there's going to be some big names coming as well. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Maya Tusi, and we are the media.